In this video, we'll be discussing Torch's reconciliation policy. Let's first understand the meaning of reconciliation. A reconciliation policy is a policy that can be created between two similar assets to ensure that your data is reliable. Using Torch, you can define the following three types of reconciliation policies. So we have data equality, hashed data equality, and profile equality match. First, we have data equality match, and this is a reconciliation policy where the system joins both data sources based on the ID column provided and tries to evaluate the condition provided on the selected columns. If any one or more of the provided conditions on columns fail, then the policy execution fails. The next one is hash data equality, which is a policy where the system joins both data sources based on the ID column provided and tries to compute a hash for the complete row on each side. It then equates both the computed hashes, and if they do not match, the policy execution fails. Finally, we have profile equality match. Now, this is a reconciliation policy where the system fetches the profile of the data assets from both sides and then compares them. If the profile does not match for both data assets, the policy execution fails. Let's create a reconciliation policy between two tables in the Snowflake Finance data source that we have here. Transaction logs being the data source asset and credit cards being the sink asset. First, let's see the sample data of the transaction logs table and see for what columns we can add a rule. Looking at this table, we can see the following columns: account ID, to account ID, and amount. And these columns indicate whether the transaction was a debit or credit transaction. Now let's see the columns available in the credit cards table. Here we have the credit card information like the card number, CVV, validity, account ID, limit, and the type of card being used. So a simple reconciliation policy that we can create between these two tables is to check and see if the total amount of money debited for an account ID is less than the provided credit limit. Before going ahead with this, we'll have to filter the account ID column in the transaction logs table because one account ID can have multiple transactions. In order to do this, what we can do is we can create a business asset on the transaction logs table. A business asset is nothing but a customized asset which is backed by a custom SQL statement, and whenever any processing happens on this custom asset, the underlying SQL is used. Now let's name it debit amount per account. Snowflake Finance as the data source, the finance database, finance schema, and a description. Type the SQL query here and click preview to see if we are getting any data for it. As you can see, we are getting the data that we need. So let's proceed and save this business asset. Let's create the reconciliation policy between the custom table or business asset that we just created and the credit cards table, keeping the business asset as the source asset and credit cards table as the sink asset. Let's name the reconciliation policy and then define the rules for the policy. We want to join the from account ID column from the transaction logs table with the account ID column from the credit cards table. Next, we'd want the total debit column from the business entity to have rules less than or equal to the value provided in the limit column of the credit cards table. Let's increase the warning of the threshold to about 95%. You can now schedule the execution of the policy and add alert channels to be notified either when there is an error, warning, or success for the rule created. Now to enable the policy, click the toggle button and then click Save. Let's execute the policy and see the result. We've gotten a data quality score of 75%, but two account IDs have a debit amount that is greater than the credit limit provided. So now we can say that most of the data in our table is accurate. We just saw how to create a business asset and a reconciliation policy. Thank you for watching.